Hey friends, welcome back to Acre Homestead. If you're new, my name is Becky and we are in my kitchen today. We are going to be making Christmas breakfast. Now you may be wondering, Christmas is long past. Well, we had a couple scheduling issues. Mainly we got sick and so we couldn't celebrate Christmas on Christmas Day. But that doesn't mean we can't still celebrate Christmas, just on a different day. And so what we're gonna do today is we are gonna get Christmas breakfast done. I am always responsible for making cinnamon rolls. I always make them. It's what I make every year. It's an adapted recipe from Pioneer Woman and the dough is incredible and we do cream cheese frosting and it is just so good. But this year, because I have a little bit more time because of pushing off our Christmas a little bit later, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to make something new, something I've never made before? And I've always wanted to try this. I've never actually even eaten it, but why not give it a try? Only thing you're gonna do is mess up Christmas breakfast, right? So what we're gonna make is we are gonna make sausage rolls. I've never had them. They've always sounded delicious to me. We're not only gonna make the sausage rolls, we are gonna make the puff pastry from scratch, which I've done one other time, but it's been a long time. This is what is called a rough puff pastry. It's kind of a hybrid, but I'll show you. I've read this recipe probably 5 times now because like I said, this is a new recipe. This is not my recipe. This is one I got from Bon Appetit, I believe. I'll link all the recipes down in the description box. I've already been in the kitchen today for a couple hours, so if you see flour on me, that is why. We made a lasagna, we made a pecan pie, we made cheesecake, and I feel like we made, oh, and we're making a bunch of bread. But I have a bunch of yeast tests going right now. You'll see that because I'm worried about my yeast quality for making the cinnamon rolls, but we'll get to that in just a minute. What I've done already before you got here was I chopped up quite a few onions and I got some onions sauteing. This is for the sausage rolls and those have been caramelizing and they're absolutely beautiful. What I've done here is I've added 4 cups of milk and 1 cup of sugar and that is warming and that is going to be for the cinnamon rolls. My milk here is nice and warm to the touch. So what I'm going to do now is add 1 cup of vegetable oil. I'm not using vegetable oil, I'm using avocado oil. You can use any neutral flavored oil you want. And I need to get one more out. This is why I always have extra of everything. So if I'm in the middle of a recipe, I don't have to run out. Now we're going to add yeast. I'm going to add 9 of these. Oops. That's not my good yeast. I just did an experiment and that yeast isn't really working, so I need to add this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm gonna stir that up. We're gonna let this sit for 1 minute and then we're gonna add the flour. I added 8 cups of flour to this. Now this is a very sticky dough and we are going to add a little bit more flour, but for now I'm going to put the lid on it and I'm going to let this sit for 1 hour and then we'll come back to it. The first time I made these cinnamon rolls, I was just on a whim and I was like, I want cinnamon rolls. So I decided to make this recipe because it looked really good. And I didn't look through the recipe completely when I went to make it and I didn't realize it calls for 9 cups of flour and it's just my husband and I was not making these for Christmas or anything. This was just, I want cinnamon rolls, so I'm going to make cinnamon rolls. Well, after I realized I needed 9 cups of flour, I was like, how many cinnamon rolls am I making? This makes a lot of cinnamon rolls. So what I did is I had to call a bunch of reinforcements in to eat these cinnamon rolls. I just called my husband's family and I said, come get cinnamon rolls. And that is how I became the cinnamon roll person that makes cinnamon rolls on Christmas morning at my husband's family because I made them and they took them and they liked them. So we're gonna fill this with brown sugar and cinnamon and we're gonna top it with a cream cheese frosting and it's so good. And what we're gonna do now is we are gonna get started on the puff pastry for the sausage rolls. I am a little bit nervous about this. I would be lying if I wasn't. What we need to do first, oh, and we're doubling this recipe, so hopefully it works. You and I will find out together whether this recipe works or not. I have my food processor out because the directions say to use a food processor and it makes this a lot easier. You can grate the butter with a box grater, but we're gonna go the easy route today and we are gonna use the food processor. Because we're doubling this, we need 3 cups of frozen butter. My husband and I just spent 10 minutes discussing this butter and we are super confused. I'm gonna go with it, what my gut is telling me, but I am really confused on the labeling. This is butter I bought from Azure. First time I'm using it, and it says that it's 8 ounces of butter, this one thing. So what I would expect this to be 1 cup of butter, right? Well, when I flip it on its side, this says 2 cups right here. It says a half of this is 1 cup, and a whole of this is 2 cups. Down here it says a half a cup equals 8 tablespoons. I would expect this to be 1 cup. I would expect 8 ounces of butter to be 1 cup, not 2 cups. When I take a standard cube of butter that I got from my local grocery store and weighed it, I've already tiered this. This says it's 4 ounces, and I know this is a half a cup of butter. It says 8 ounces on the front, and when I weigh it, it says 8 ounces. I would expect 2 of these, 8 ounces, to be 1 cup. But could you explain to me in the comments why this says 2 cups on it if it's 8 ounces of butter? So I'm going to go with my gut. For my double recipe of my puff pastry, I need 3 cups of butter. So I'm going to use 3 of these. This one I cut in half because my husband and I, it was part of the discussion on figuring out whether this is 3 cups of butter or 6 cups of butter. If puff pastry wasn't confusing enough, they are trying to confuse us with the labeling on this butter. This is frozen butter. And I have my food processor out. The reason it's white is I've already made pie crust in this once today. So I am not going to clean it between because it just had butter and flour in it. I'm going to turn this on and we're going to grate this butter. I have it on the grating section. You want to work with really cold frozen butter. I'm going to take this, put it in my bowl. I hope this is right because this is a lot of really high quality butter that I'm using. I'm going to break this up and put it in here. I have my bucket of flour down here. I'm going to take a quarter cup of flour, and I'm going to sprinkle it all over this. You don't really want to touch this with your hands because I don't want to melt this butter. I'm just going to incorporate that flour, try to break up these big chunks. I'm going to evenly distribute this butter, and I'm going to pretend like I know what I'm doing because that always helps. Now we're going to take this butter and we're going to stick it back in the freezer. We're going to move on to the next step with this puff pastry. I just reread the directions probably 4 more times to make sure I have this down correctly. And what I need to do is whisk the sugar, salt, and flour in this bowl. So we're going to do a big bucket of flour here. Because this is a double batch, I am going to add, we need to add the salt too. 2.5 cups. So we're going to do 2.5, 4, 5 cups of flour. Now we're going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar and 3 teaspoons of salt, which would be 1 tablespoon. And that says kosher salt, so this is fine. So I'm going to add all that. We're going to whisk this together. And then I need to get some cold milk out and 1/3 cup ice water. Ice water is not in the directions. Well, now I'm really confused because it says stir in milk, which in the ingredients it says 1/3 cup milk. So I would do 2/3 cup milk because I'm doubling the recipe. And then in the directions under step 3, it says stir milk and 1/3 cup ice water in a measuring cup and drizzle over flour mixture. Well, does that mean I add 1/3 cup milk and 1/3 cup ice water? Even though in the ingredients it doesn't say ice water. I think so, because 1/3 cup of milk only probably, well, 2/3 because we're doubling it, would not be enough liquid for this. So I got to get some ice water out and I got to get some milk out. And I gotta get the butter back out of the freezer. I'm glad you're here to talk me through this. We already had a yeast debacle. I have to remake a double batch of no-knead bread after I'm done with these two recipes because I use dead yeast. I have never tested my yeast before. I always assumed it's alive, but for some reason after I made a double batch of no-knead bread earlier today, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna test my yeast. And it was definitely dead. So I did find some yeast in my freezer that was alive. I just opened it, it was vacuum sealed, and I used that for the cinnamon rolls, and the cinnamon rolls are rising. I just checked them. It wouldn't be cooking in Becky's kitchen if there weren't a couple hiccups. I'm not a professional chef here. I am just a home cook who likes to dabble in the culinary arts. All right, let me get the milk and the ice water out. I got my frozen butter out, and I need to reread this just to make sure I'm doing this correctly. Add half of the frozen butter to this mixture. Okay. Let's see. How do I do half? I guess I just eyeball it. Start with that. Mix that together. There we go. Okay, I'm glad we're in this together because I'm honestly nervous about this. Okay, now we're going to drizzle. This is where it says drizzle the 1/3 cup of ice water and the 1/3 cup of milk. So we're going to do 2/3 and 2/3. This is a 1/3, so I'm going to do 2 of these. I think I'm going to stir this in. And I'm going to do 1 more of those. It says it's going to be shaggy, but we still, yeah, there's definitely, it must be that they missed the 1/3 cup in the ingredients of water, because there's no way that that would be enough liquid to get us to where we need to go. Okay, and it does say we may need more water, so I'm going to keep my glass nearby. So now we're technically at the amount of water that I believe we're supposed to have for this recipe. I'm trying to get a sense if there's enough moisture in this pastry, and my gut is telling me not quite yet. So we're going to work a little bit more water into it. A trick I like to do when I make my pie crust is I will take the more moist dough part and I will start to form that into a ball. But a lot of times there'll be some crumbly bits at the bottom that just don't have quite enough moisture in them. So instead of trying to work with the whole amount of dough, I'll take the more moist part out and then I'll add water just to the drier, crumblier bits. This way I can try to ensure to add as least of water as possible. I'm assuming this is like pie crust where the more water you add, the tougher your pastry could become. So that is what I'm doing here. I need to read this again. Okay, it said you can knead this more than you can knead your traditional pastry. So that's what I'm going to do, is try to work this and not add any more water. It says knead it a few times until you get a ball, I guess. This butter is beautiful. I'm kind of working on the saran wrap so I can keep it together a little bit. And now what I'm going to do, because I have it kind of in a ball, this is where I'm going to cut it in half and I'm going to divide it and work half and half. Okay. Now it says Oh, you can already kind of start to see some layers forming. Can you see that? That's cool. Okay, now roll dough lightly, flour. This is what Claire at Bon Appetit always does. She wraps it up in saran wrap. Well, I guess she's not with Bon Appetit anymore. She's a dessert person, but she shapes her pastry in saran wrap. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I want it one square or rectangle shape, kind of. And it says 1 inch thick. Oh, and this is a Bon Appetit recipe. Okay. Now I'm going to transfer this into the freezer and let this chill again. I'm going to do that same thing to this one. I'd be lying if I didn't say my adrenaline wasn't a little bit high right now. Whew! The thrill of making a new recipe, right? This is how I get my adrenaline rush, I guess. The worst thing I can do is ruin Christmas breakfast, but they don't know I'm bringing this, so I guess it wouldn't be ruined because they don't even know it's on the menu. I just decided to make this. All right, into the freezer. Woohoo! Okay, our yeast is alive for sure. Now we're gonna finish this recipe, or we're gonna do the next step on it. We're gonna add 1 more cup of flour. Got to make room in there for it. Now we're going to add a tablespoon of salt. Remember, this is a lot of dough. A heaping teaspoon of baking powder. Now this is a half teaspoon, so 2 heaping teaspoons. I'm going to stir that in. And a scant teaspoon of baking soda. And we're going to stir that in. So you think the dough is too wet to begin with, but then you add this extra cup of flour, and we are going to refrigerate this, and we're going to work with cold dough, so it makes it a lot easier to work with when it's cold. But this is a very moist dough, which lends to a beautiful, beautiful final product. I always make this dough in my Dutch oven. I'm going to knead it till it becomes a nice, beautiful ball. I don't need to knead this a ton because I am going to let this sit in the refrigerator for almost 2 days, and that'll help form the gluten. I have made this recipe with butter too. You can do that. I'm going to oil the top with a little bit of avocado oil just so it doesn't dry out. You can use this dough right away, or you can put it in the fridge for 3 days. And I'm going to put it in the fridge until Thursday morning. We're going to make the sausage roll filling. I cut up and caramelized 2 onions right here. I'm going to mix it right in here so I don't dirty up another pot. I have 2 pounds of breakfast sausage. I put gloves on because I'm going to mix this with my hands. Pepper. I shouldn't have put those gloves on yet because I needed to measure everything out first. Salt. Here's some breadcrumbs. This is a bag of breadcrumbs I keep in my freezer when I have a random, maybe like hamburger bun or hot dog bun or end of bread that we didn't eat. I just grind it up and throw it in the freezer, and I happen to just recycle this hamburger bun bag, so I didn't have to waste a Ziploc bag. I have some thyme, homegrown parsley, and now we mix. I should have added sage to this. I did not. I do not feel like taking my gloves off and redoing this. So if you're making this, I would probably recommend you add a little bit of sage. That is nice and mixed. I'm going to put this in the fridge. All right, friends, it is now time to start adding the lamination to our puff pastry. I just took this out of the freezer. It's been in the freezer, I don't know, 10-15 minutes. We're gonna start layering in the butter and start our folds. I'm gonna start with this one because it was colder, and let's see if we can do this. We need to reread these directions again and again and again. Okay. Roll dough on lightly floured surface 18 to 6 inches rectangular, dusting underneath with more flour to prevent sticking. Place dough on work surface for short side facing you. Now imagine that the divided into blah, 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 blah. Sprinkle about, okay, so I need to divide this butter in half. I need to divide this butter in half or this is gonna get really confusing. I'm gonna have to divide this in half again when I roll this out. So if I don't divide this now, I'm not gonna be able to keep track of what I'm doing. This seems like a lot of butter. I hope I'm not messing this recipe up. Okay, this is gonna go in the freezer because we're gonna use this when we do the other one. I got this one step, so we're going to take half this butter. No. Here. Man, this seems like a lot of butter. Am I messing this up? I could be totally messing this up. Oh, I gotta seal the sides. Try this again. Already messing up here, friends. Seems like a lot of butter. Okay. Now I rotate it 90 degrees. I'm gonna add this butter. I don't know if I'm supposed to, but okay, it does say you can keep reincorporating butter, so okay, last one, and then it's going back in the fridge. All right, I'm gonna wrap this tightly, back in the fridge, and then I'm gonna do the same thing with the other one. So it says put back in, oh, it says chill for 20 minutes or overnight. Most people probably wouldn't recommend doubling a recipe when you're making it basically for the first time. I'm really glad I decided to double it because by the time I was going and working the second pastry, I understood what I was doing and I definitely had a lot more confidence and it made a lot more sense to me. And going into ever making this again, which I'm going to be making it in January, the end of January for my dad's birthday, we're going to be doing a beef Wellington together for his birthday. and I've never made a beef Wellington, but now that I've made this pastry, I definitely have a lot more confidence going into making a beef Wellington. And when you have such an investment on the roast, the tenderloin roast, that is something that I'm glad that I at least have the pastry kind of under my belt and I have a better understanding and concept of what that looks like. Whew, we got it done. Kitchen is kind of cleaned up. I got the puff pastry in the refrigerator, but for tonight, we're gonna be done. Good morning, friends. It is early. It is 5 a.m. and I couldn't quite face the camera that early in the morning. So I got up, and I had to get up early enough in order to have these cinnamon rolls rise because we are supposed to be at my father-in-law's house at 9 a.m. and I still have to roll out the sausage rolls. I could have done this yesterday, but I was editing a different video and I kind of wanted to take the day off in the kitchen, so I just compromised by having to get up early. No big deal. I divided the dough in two, and we're going to work in sections. Each one of these sections is going to make 12 rolls. Now you could definitely double this and make smaller cinnamon rolls, which is usually what I do, but for some reason this year I decided I wanted really big cinnamon rolls, and I think next year I'm going to go back to making them a little bit smaller. Now once they're rolled, I am going to top them with some softened butter and brown sugar and cinnamon. I have made this dough and filled it with multiple different things. I filled it with strawberry jam, raspberry jam. I've done a cranberry orange roll. I've also filled them with pecans and raisins. So this really can be made into whatever you want. Some people prefer also to use white sugar as opposed to brown sugar, and I've just found that I prefer the brown sugar. I've used melted butter when making cinnamon rolls, and it tends to make a huge mess. That's why I have started using softened butter now. When you go to spread your filling, the melted butter just kind of oozes everywhere, and when you go to roll it, your cinnamon rolls, it kind of makes a mess as well. So if you can use softened butter, I'd highly recommend that. And then once you have your filling in there, we are going to roll everything up. This is cinnamon. I guess I forgot to mention that I do sprinkle cinnamon. I don't measure any of the fillings either. I do it mostly all by sight, and that's just kind of typically how I cook. So when we go to roll, you want to try to keep the roll nice and tight, and all you have to do is roll it up. If you fill it too full, then the stuff starts to ooze out as well. This dough is a pretty sweet dough, so it doesn't need a ton of sugar on the inside, and we are going to be topping it with frosting as well. Once you have this all rolled up, once I have it all rolled, I take a little bit of water on my fingers and I run it along the edge, and I pull the dough up to the center and I pinch it and I try to close that seam. I then am going to take a little bit of butter and I'm going to brush it on the pan that we're going to put this on. Again, I don't measure anything. I just put a thin layer of butter along the pan that we are going to serve these cinnamon rolls in. I'm going to make 12 cinnamon rolls. I'm going to use a serrated knife. I found that's the easiest way to cut cinnamon rolls. I cut it in half, I cut it in half again, and then I cut it in thirds. And we have perfect cinnamon rolls. All right, I can view the camera. I've been up for an hour now. It's 6 a.m., 6:02 to be exact. I've had a little bit of coffee. Now what we're gonna do is we are gonna try to roll out our puff pastry, our rough puff, and make our sausage rolls. I watched a couple videos last night on how to do this. So, because I took two recipes, I don't know if I told you that. I took a sausage roll recipe that used a store-bought puff pastry, and then I'm taking the rough puff pastry recipe from Bon Appetit, and I'm combining the two. Because I wanted to try to make it homemade. I have the cinnamon rolls rising here. They need to rise for probably another 45 minutes. Those ones probably only have about 10 more minutes, but I'm probably gonna put them both in the oven at the same time. Sorry if I look a little bit dead. I haven't showered yet. I woke up, I came downstairs, and we started this. We're gonna roll out this rough puff, and why I wanna get this rolled out is I wanna get the sausage rolls rolled, and then I wanna get them back in the freezer before we cook them. I want the butter in my rough puff pastry to be as cold as possible before we throw it in the oven. If you put pastry in the oven and the butter is not super cold, the butter just melts instead of evaporating the water to create those flaky crusts, and then you get just greasy, dry puff pastry instead of flaky puff pastry. Because I've spent a lot of time on this, I want it to work. Let's roll it out. It might be a little hard to roll out because it's been in the refrigerator now for 2 days. Oh yeah, that's hard. All right, I'll be back when I have this rolled out. This is gonna take me probably 15-20 minutes to get this rolled out. I decided to cut it in half because I thought it would be a lot easier to work with half the amount of dough, and that was a good call. But I noticed, look how beautiful these layers are. I think this is gonna work out. I wrapped the one I wasn't using, and I'm gonna stick that one back in the refrigerator so it stays cold while we work with this one. I tried to roll it out to about the same diameter of what you would get from store-bought puff pastry. I think I rolled it out a little bit thicker, and I put it back on a cookie sheet and back in the refrigerator, covered it with a little bit of saran wrap, and I repeated this process 3 more times until I had all of the puff pastry rolled out. I'm a little nervous about how this is going to go, but also pretty excited. I took a cookie sheet and lined it with some parchment paper. I also have some poppy seeds and some sunflower seeds for decoration on top. We have 2 eggs here. I scrambled a little bit. I'm kind of bummed because I used my pastry brush with the butter, and now I don't have a pastry brush to brush on this because I threw away my old one. I'm thinking I do not have enough sausage mixture to fill all the puff pastry I made. I'm going to cut this into thirds. This is about the size of what you would buy at the store, and when I read online, that's what they said to do, was to cut the puff pastry in the 3 sections that it's folded in. I'm just eyeballing this. And now I have my 3 pieces of pastry. I'm going to take some sausage. If I don't have enough thawed sausage to fill all of what I made today, or this morning, I'm going to thaw some more sausage and make more of these and freeze them, because I read that you can freeze these from a raw state. I'm trying to go a little bit generous with the sausage because I don't want it to be skimpy. I want the ratio of sausage to puff pastry to be a nice even one, but I don't want too much sausage that the pastry is going to be done cooking and the sausage is still going to be raw in the inside. So it seems to be like it's a pretty fine balance between the two. But so far this seems to be going pretty well. Seems if you're going to go through the effort to make this, you might as well make more and freeze them. So you use this with butter. It says to egg wash one side. You know what? I almost filled them too full. Not quite, but almost filled too full. So that's good to note. Okay, that's good to note. Don't overfill them. I didn't even think about that. That works a lot better if it's not full, if it's not so full. So I think I want to make them kind of bite size. Should I do thirds or halves? I'm gonna do halves. Before I fill the next sausage rolls, I'm gonna put the cinnamon rolls in the oven. I think they've proofed enough. I have the oven set to 350 degrees. Now back to filling sausage rolls. I'm gonna set the timer. Hey Siri, set timer for 20 minutes. This is a lot better percentage here because I can roll it up. So these aren't going to take as long to cook as those first ones I made. A lot less sausage in them. So that'll be a good test for future to know how much sausage I should put in it. I'm not pinching it together. I'm going to just kind of roll it and let that egg wash seal that. Time to egg wash. I really wish my pastry brush didn't have a bunch of butter on it, but we'll just work with what we have. I'm going to egg wash each one of these, trying to get all the way down to the sides. I just checked on the cinnamon rolls and they look really nice in there, puffing up nicely. It is now 7:17. We are meeting at my father-in-law's house at 9 a.m. and I still need to shower and get ready. And we still need to bake the sausage rolls and we need to make the frosting for the cinnamon rolls. So as soon as I get these brushed, I'm going to grab the other ones, I'm going to brush the other ones, and we're going to get the frosting made. So I think if I'm to put these into the freezer, if I was to put these in the freezer to use later, I would not put the egg wash on. I would stick them right in the freezer right before the egg wash step. And I think you can bake them from frozen. I need to do a little bit more research on that. We have our sesame seeds. Okay, these are going back in the refrigerator. I'm trying to keep this butter as cold as possible. Time to make the frosting. I have 1/8 ounce block of cream cheese there. We're gonna add a 1/2 cup of butter, which is half of this butter here. Isn't this beautiful? Can you see how yellow this butter is? This is grass-fed butter I got through Azure, and I'm super happy with it. I'll link it down in the description box if you're interested in it. We're gonna cream the butter and cream cheese mixture together. Now we're gonna add 3 cups of powdered sugar. I added vanilla and a pinch of salt already. Most years I double this recipe, but I feel like I make too much frosting because the cinnamon rolls are pretty sweet. The bread is pretty sweet. There's a good amount of sugar in it. So it doesn't need a ton of frosting. So I'm just going to do 1 batch this year. Hopefully it's enough. And I have an extra bag of powdered sugar. I'm going to go ahead and fill this up since I'm here. The cinnamon rolls were getting too dark and they were not cooked on the inside, so I put a layer of foil on them, just so you know. There's our frosting. Just that easy. When I was decorating for Christmas and I went to the grocery store and I was talking about powdered sugar, a few of you guys had asked, why don't I make my own powdered sugar? And I looked it up and it is so easy, and now that I have a high-powered blender, I can totally make it. I haven't made it yet because I bought 4 bags of powdered sugar. But I am totally going to try to make my own homemade powdered sugar. You just take sugar, put it in a blender, and blend it up. And organic powdered sugar is so expensive, and organic cane sugar is not that expensive in comparison. It is more expensive than your typical white sugar, but I'm going to try making homemade powdered sugar. Let me know if you've ever made homemade powdered sugar. I have my lower oven preheated to 425 degrees. My pizza stone is in there. I'm going to take that. Put that up at the bottom shelf. Cinnamon rolls are always hard for me to know when they're done because they're rolled up, and I'm always stressed I'm going to undercook them. These were really big cinnamon rolls. You could probably cut these cinnamon rolls in half if you wanted twice as many, but I decided to make big ones, so they're taking a while to cook. It is now 7:49. I really need a shower. Those lower sausage rolls are supposed to take 25 minutes at 425 degrees, but I'm worried that this is not gonna take that long. I'm gonna go try to take a 10 to 15 minute shower. I think these cinnamon rolls can handle that, hopefully. And then I'll come back down and we'll check on them. We've already had the fire alarm go off because these sausage rolls are super steamy. Look how beautiful they are. Perfection. Well, I hope. I've never eaten a sausage roll before, and I've never made a sausage roll before, but they look good. All right, I'm gonna get these on a drying rack to get them out of this grease. The cinnamon rolls are done. I'm a little worried that this one and this one and this one aren't completely done on the inside, but the outside ones are definitely done, and I didn't want the outside ones to get overcooked. I think I had the dough a little too cold before I put it in the oven, so it didn't bake completely evenly. But that's okay, I still think they'll taste great. I have the frosting made. These are way too hot. I cannot put this frosting on now because it will just melt. We have our beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sausage rolls here. I know sausage rolls are really common in Australia and I think the UK. I have never eaten them before. It's not something that we eat here very often, so I'm excited to try these. I was showering and I was thinking, I don't even know if they're a breakfast food, but I use breakfast sausage, so we're gonna eat them for breakfast. All right, let's get this packed up so that we can head out. It's 8:40 and we're supposed to be there at 9, so we probably are gonna be a few minutes late. I hate being late. I never am late. I'm usually 10 minutes or 20 minutes early. It drives my husband crazy how early I am. But when you're the one bringing the food, I think it's okay if you're a little bit late because everyone's gonna wait on you anyway. I have a sink full of dirty dishes. My husband last night, he was so gracious and he unloaded the dishwasher, but we didn't get the dishes into the dishwasher. So when I get home, that's what I'm gonna do. I did already kind of clean up the kitchen after I got out of the shower, and we're gonna get this packed up and we're gonna head out to breakfast. We're gonna head out and we're gonna head to Christmas morning breakfast. Wow. Wow, wow. Wow. That is cooked all the way through, extremely savory. It'd be really good with a little bit of mustard, I think. That is probably one of the best things I've ever eaten. Wow. I think using that really high quality butter made a difference too. We are packed up and ready to go. 2 cinnamon rolls and frosting at the bottom, sausage rolls here. I am thrilled with how these sausage rolls turned out. I think we could have done a little bit better on the cinnamon rolls. Next time I need to make sure that I have the dough a little bit more room temperature before I throw it in the oven so that it bakes a little bit more evenly, but not worried about it. They're gonna taste great. Everyone's gonna enjoy them. This was quite the adventure trying to get this put together. I enjoyed every minute of it. A little bit of stress. This is how I get my adrenaline going, I guess, is by trying new recipes and seeing if they turn out, and I think this was a win. I hope this gives you a little bit of confidence or encouragement to try to make your own puff pastry or just to try a new recipe in general, because it's fun trying new recipes, and I really enjoyed this. I think we're gonna start doing some videos together where all we do is try new recipes together and see if they turn out or not. I hope you guys had a great holiday season. I can't wait to see what our new year holds for us. We are gonna have a lot of fun in 2020. I am now just starting to think about the garden season, and I can't wait to see what that's gonna look like. If you enjoyed this cooking video, don't forget I cooked an entire Christmas dinner, and I can link that right there if you missed that video, and I'll link a garden video right here as well if you wanna go check a garden video out, because I know we're all itching to get into the garden because it's a little bit cold and gloomy outside, and it'd be nice when it's warm and we're being sun-kissed again. I want to say a huge thank you to every single one of you for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. I don't take that for granted. I appreciate every single one of you. You have made my year 2021 an incredible year, and I want to say a huge thank you to you for doing that. If you're new, please consider subscribing. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye guys.